Hey everyone, and welcome back to the series where I crochet a square out of the Granny Square Stitches card deck every week all year. So we are up to week number 12. We're going to do this one, which is called Blocks and V's. So it's a combination of like the granny stitch block and a V-stitch. So this should be fun. So we've got 4 colors. So I have pulled out agate green, poppy red, lime, and lemon ice. And yeah, let's get started. All right, first things first, let's look at the card and see what we're supposed to be doing. So for this square, to work the square shown on the card, make a 14 chain and follow the chart, working in 1 row stripes of yarns A through D until square. And then we do the border like we've been doing the past 11 weeks, which is shown on pages 22 and 23. So just a single crochet border. To work the stitch pattern in any size, so your starting chain needs to be a multiple of 3 plus 5, and then you follow the chart. So we are going to make our 14 chains, and then it looks like we come into the 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4th chain from the hook, and we make 3 double crochets. So let's get our chain of 14. The chart shows us starting with green. So I have reordered my yarns so I can start with green. So I'm going to make a slip knot, put that on my hook, and then I'm going to make 14 chains. That's 14. And hopefully you're familiar by now with the fact that I work into my back bumps. So I have just turned my chain over so that I can see those back bumps. And I'm going to count out the 4 chains that we missed. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We technically missed 3, and then we work into that 4th one. And I'm going to put 3 double crochets in there. So I'm going to yarn over, insert into that bump, pull through a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. I'm going to do that 2 more times. So yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and 1 more time, just like that. When we look at our chart shows us everything we need to do. After our 3 double crochets into that chain, we're going to chain 1. We're going to make 3 more double crochets, but in between we're going to skip 2 chains. So I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to skip 2 chains on my chain, and into that 3rd chain I am going to make my 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And that's my stitch pattern repeat along this row. So I'm going to chain 1, skip 2 chains, and into that 3rd chain put 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, skip 2 chains. I have 4 chains left, so I'm going to skip 2. I'm going to work my 3 double crochets into this second to last chain, and then we'll take a look at the chart again to see what it wants us to do in that last chain. So we're right here. I've just made these 3 double crochets in this second to last chain. So now I'm going to double crochet in my last chain, changing color, and we're going to go into the yellow. And once we change color, we're going to chain 4. You see how there's 3 little ovals up the side here, and then there's 1 there. So I'm going to chain 4, and that's going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. and then I'm going to make a V-stitch in my chain 1 space. So a V-stitch is a double crochet. This one has 2 chains and then another double crochet. So let's work all that together. I'm going to be changing color in this final double crochet, so I'm going to yarn over and insert into my final chain, pull through a loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull through those first 2. I'm going to drop my green, grab my yellow, place it on my hook, and draw that through. And now I'm going to chain 4 with my yellow. Now I bet we're gonna have to work into that chain. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to chain 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to place a stitch marker in this 3rd chain, because I'm guessing we are going to be working a double crochet into that 3rd chain eventually. So stitch marker goes there. I'm going to chain 1 more time. I have turned my work, and now I need to find this chain 1 space here. So I'm going to skip over all of these stitches to come over to my chain 1 space. I'm going to yarn over, insert into the chain 1 space, and make a double crochet, and then chain 2, yarn over again, go right back into that same chain 1 space and make another double crochet, and that's my V-stitch. And now I'm going to chain 1, jump over my granny cluster from the row below, and make my V-stitch in this next chain 1 space. So double crochet, 2 chains, and then another double crochet all into that chain 1 space. I'm going to chain 1 again, hop over this next cluster, and make a V in that chain 1 space. So double crochet, chain 2, double crochet all into that chain 1 space. So now we're getting near the end of our chart here. I've just made this last V. Now I need to chain 1 and double crochet in the top of my starting chain. So let's find that first so that you know where you're looking. These are my 3 double crochet stitches, 1, 2, 3. So I need to make my double crochet down here. Let's just put a stitch marker right in that space there. That's the top of my turning chain. So I need to chain 1 to hop over this cluster, and then I'm going to come all the way to where my stitch marker was, and find those 2 strands of my chain, and I'm going to do a double crochet. Now I'm going to change color here. We're bringing in our poppy red. So I'm going to lay that poppy red on my hook and pull it through. Just got to tighten everything up. And just like the last row, we're starting with a chain of 3. So I'm going to mark that the top of that chain, because I imagine we'll be working into that one again as well. Okay, let's take a look at what we do with the poppy. So I've done my chain of 3, and now I'm immediately going to make a cluster in that first chain 1 space. And then I'm going to chain 1 and cluster in the next chain 1 space. And that's my repeat. So I've got my chain of 3, and this is my chain 1 space. So I'm going to make my granny cluster in there. That is 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, hop over my V-stitch, and place a granny cluster in the next chain 1 space. So 3 double crochets. Chain 1, hop over this V-stitch, granny cluster in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1. We're at the end of our row. I've just done this last chain 1, so I'm going to put a cluster in the very last chain 1 space and then double crochet into my turning chain. So that's why I put my stitch marker in the top of this 3rd chain, because I was fairly confident we'd have to work into it. So I have chained 1. I'm going to hop over this. I'm putting my granny cluster in this last chain 1 space. And now I've got my stitch marker there. I'm just going to kind of hold on to that with my fingers. I'm going to yarn over, and then that's where I make my double crochet. And I'm changing color again, so we need our blue. We're going to start with a chain of, well, we're starting with a chain of 4, but we're starting with a chain of 3 so that I can mark the top of that turning chain. I'm going to turn, I'm going to chain 1. I'm hopping over my granny cluster and I'm making a V-stitch in this chain 1 space. So double crochet, chain 2, double crochet is our V-stitch. Chain 1 to hop over the cluster, V-stitch in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, hop over this cluster, V-stitch in this chain 1 space. Chain 1 to hop over the cluster, and then we need to put a double crochet in this turning chain where our stitch marker was. And we're going to switch color again back to the green, which is attached over here. So unfortunately, everyone, we are going to be cutting our yarn and weaving in a whole lot of ends when we're done. So I'm just going to cut each color so it's easier to grab. Okay, I've got my green. I'm going to lay that on top, pull it through. Chain 3, put my stitch marker in the top of that 3rd chain. Turn my work. And then I can granny cluster in that very first chain 1 space. So the repeat's pretty easy. We're going to be left with a whole lot of tails, but we can handle that. So let's take a look. According to the pattern, we should be able to do the repeat, well, almost 4 times. So they only do the blue once. So we will see with my tension how many repeats I get. So I'm going to keep going until this is square, and I will come back and we'll work the border together. See you then. So it turns out that following the pattern on the front of the card, my square is square. So I weaved in all my ends, and now I'm ready to do the border. So I'm just going to pull back this last double crochet that I made so that we can make it together. Let's zoom in first. Sorry about that. And just like the card, I decided to switch to yellow to do my border. So I'm starting my last double crochet. I'm going to bring in my yellow for the last pull through, and then this time I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. Now, if you remember, I think it was last week when we did our single crochet across the top, we had to skip certain stitches to make the stitch count work. So along the bottom here, I know we started with a chain of 14, but then we worked into that 4th chain. So let's just see what our stitch count is at the top, and then we can decide. We're probably going to have to add some stitches along the bottom to square it off, and then let's see what we've got, what we're working with at the top. So if we count, we've got our last double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets. 5 would be the chain 1, plus 3 is 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's probably too many. So I think what we'll do is, just like last time, I think we're going to skip these 3, and that should leave us with 14 across the top. And then we'll just have to make sure that we, I'll probably add a couple in each corner so that we get to 14 along the bottom. We can tackle that when we get there. So I have chained 1. I'm going to single crochet in that very first stitch. I'm just going to tug on my ends to sort of tighten them up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all my double crochets. I'm going to skip over this chain 1 space and go straight into my next double crochet. Skipping over my chain 1 space, I'm basically just putting single crochets into tops of double crochets. And then I can take out this stitch marker, which was indicating the top of my turning chain, and I can put a single crochet there. So let's see what we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That to me is a much more reasonable number to be starting with. All right, so we're at a corner. At our corners, we have a single crochet, a chain 1, and another single crochet, all into that 1 stitch. And if you have issues finding that chain 1 space later, put a stitch marker in there and it'll help. Now down the sides, we've got basically a whole lot of double crochets or chain 3s, which are pretending to be double crochets. So like standard way of figuring out how many stitches to put down the sides of your work is 2 single crochets per double crochet row. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. That's perfect. That will even the top. So we've got 1 already. I'm going to find spaces to make my second one. Now I have woven in ends into these sides, so it might be a little trickier to get your hook through. But you're just going to sort of make spaces. And we want 2 double crochets per row. Pardon my dog. Okay, So down at the bottom here, I am going to get my last single crochet. I'm going to try and work it in to the bottom of this turning chain. This is a corner, so I'm going to chain one. I'm going to work another stitch in that space. So now along the bottom, we basically had a whole bunch of stitches in one chain. We skipped two. So if I follow that rule of one stitch per stitch or chain, we've got one there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we definitely need at least one more stitch somewhere. So I think I am going to put a stitch in between. So I'm kind of going in between the chain and this first cluster and adding a stitch there. And then I can put one in the stitch where my cluster is. I'm going to put two around this chain because, to be honest, I don't really feel like trying to dig through the chain to make my stitch into the chain. And then I'm just going to keep going like that, one in to the stitch where my clusters are coming out of, two around the chain. And now we're at the end. We've got our 3 chains and then our last double crochet. So I am going to add a stitch kind of in the gap there, and then one in the bottom of that double crochet, and that should be 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. Perfect. So now I can chain one, go right back into that same space that I just crocheted into, and put another single crochet in there. And now I just do my 2 single crochets up the side. Round 2 is just a single crochet in every stitch all the way around, which I think you can probably manage on your own at this point. So I will meet you up when the square is finished and we can take a look at it. See you then. And there we go, all finished, ends woven in and everything. So that is week 12, blocks and V's. So next week, we're gonna making this one. That looks fun. This is called Granny Diamond. All right, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.